Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to Brewing with Magic. Well, we're still in spoiler season, and we have got some absolutely amazing cards. If this format does not just throw Standard on its head, I don't know what's going to, because some of these cards we're going to talk about today are absolutely just super powerful. So before we start this episode, would you like to say anything, Will?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you, everybody, all of our subscribers, those who are watching us maybe for the first time. We're definitely a fun, competitive format on Arena, and we love to do all this great stuff for you guys.
And if you do subscribe, when we hit 500 subscribers, you'll be eligible to win some fun stuff. Want to know what I'm talking about? Check the description down below, rate, review, and smash that subscribe button. Already a subscriber, thank you very much for being part of the Brew Crew family. It's really appreciated. Also, check down below for our Twitter and share this on social media. So why don't we just go ahead and get into it? First, we have Minsc Beloved Ranger, and it is a 3-colored gold card. I think that's always fun myself. 1 white, 1 green, and 1 red for a total of 3 mana. It is a legendary creature human ranger. Comes out as a 3/3. 3/3 for 3 is always good. When Minsc Beloved Ranger enters the battlefield, create Boo, a legendary 1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. I hadn't read that one yet, so far I'm loving it. And he's even holding a little hamster. Okay, and then you can pay X. It doesn't tap, you just pay X. Until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. So you get a big old giant XX Boo hamster giant thing. So this looks super fun.
Yeah, I like this guy. I was actually thinking, I mean, essentially he's in those Naya colors, right? So you have red, green, white, all that kind of fun stuff. Those go big decks, those adventure decks up until September you can probably still use. Go wide mechanics, Spellslinger decks. I was thinking about that as well. Just due to the fact that it's target creature. So it doesn't have to be Boo. It can be any creature. So when I was thinking about it was if you're building a Naya build and you're doing a Spellslinger deck using like Spell Mage, or Spellcraft, and you're able to cast a spell and bump your other creatures anyways, +2/+2 or +1/+1, that type of stuff. You can also now increase their base power and toughness. So not only are they a 2/2, now they're a 6/6. So, and now they're coming in for even bigger damage. So he's going to be interesting to kind of play around with.
What I saw right out the gate is something like this just is begging to be in Naya Adventures, because not only does that 1/1 enable the good old Lovestruck Beast, but you can swing with your Lovestruck Beast and the 1/1, and after attacks have happened, Lovestruck's already attacking, you can make that little 1 much, much bigger. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's a mana sink. I like it. So, okay, well next we have Old Gnarlbone, and that's 2 green, 5 colorless for a 7/7 legendary creature dragon. Flying, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. This is like Toski's cousin.
Oh, this is going to be insane. So imagine this. He is a 7/7. If he hits, you're creating 7 treasures. If he comes on the board and a creature is attacking for 2, 3, or 4, whatever, you're creating that many treasures. So he is definitely going to be hyper explosive. If you're playing him in certain shells, like say mono green, you're able to ramp to him. Up until September, you'll still have some of the lands where you can like pump them for 6, add 1 more, get him out maybe a turn earlier. Things along those lines. You do have those abilities, and if you're already playing green, you already have those creatures to build more mana and do more things with them. So definitely he will probably see that in that shell itself. But I'm also looking at him more from, and again, I play Commander, so he is definitely going to be a Commander include in a lot of decks that utilize treasures. In the 99, he's definitely probably not going to be the actual Commander itself, but definitely in the 99. And there's just so many cards right now that you can kind of like use in those decks that utilize treasures that really just have you go over the top and win the game or have infinite turns. It's just, it's insane. So he's a great card.
And my first thought is this goes well in a go big Gruul deck, and it's just partnering up with Crackle with Power. So if this gets in once and then they kill this, now you can use that Crackle with Power just to finish the game. I mean, you got 7 mana just from that alone, plus you'll probably, let's say, have, if you had some mana rampers, 5 on the board, so that's 12 mana. You're gonna crackle pretty hard. So that's interesting. Next we have Zorn, 1 red, 2 colorless, creature elemental. It is a 3/2, so it for you know, I hate having a 2 defense on a 3-drop, but I'm over that. If you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, instead create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. Okay. If you're going treasure heavy, this looks okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first saw this guy, I was like, okay, it's pretty cool because what he can do, yeah, the backside's not where you want it to be. And of course, up until we get into that, rotation, a lot of those back twos for defense are, their viability drops, right? But it's what he can do is what makes him that much more viable. So, like in a Boros deck, an Izzet deck, maybe mono red, think about the cards that go with him. Just Izzet alone, right? So Gorath Prismari, right? So it comes on the battlefield, instead of creating one treasure, it's creating two. Goldspan Dragon, when it attacks, instead of creating one, it's creating two. Magda, when she attacks, instead of creating one, it's creating two. So it's definitely giving you that boost, and he just has to be on the board. So say you play him on turn 3, you have Magda, swing with Magda, you're creating one treasure, note you're creating two treasures. So now you're pumping yourself up. He's getting at least a little bit of value. So there's those things that I see there, but what makes him even just more explosive is in historic. With this card alone, imagine him with Smothering Tithe. So on every turn, your opponent is drawing a card, you're creating a treasure. While with Zorn on the board, you're creating two every time they draw a card because it's per instant.
Okay.
So that means if you have effects that make them draw multiple cards, it'll definitely affect it because it's per instant that you have to pay. So he's creating two treasures every time. So that's why that card's going to be really good in historic.
Yeah, okay. I definitely see the value here. I just have a feeling that when you're building decks, if you have to start cutting, unfortunately, I think this might be one of the first cards you're cutting. So I hope it sees some of the 60, but I'm interested to see what people do with this. So
yeah.
Okay, well, next, if you are a fan of Kiki Jiki, and if Kiki Jiki somehow turned into a younger lady, that's what you're going to have here. This card is really powerful. You have Delina, Wild Mage. It's 1 red, 3 colorless. I could care less that it has a 2 defense, because if it sticks, it's gross. So it's a 3/2 legendary creature, Elf Shaman. Thank God it's legendary, and you'll see why. When Delina, Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control. Then roll a d20. So you can even choose her. It doesn't say another creature. If you roll a 1 through 14, create a tapped attacking token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it has exile this creature at end of combat.
Yep.
Now the next 15 through 20, the wording's a little clunky, but it does make sense. If you roll 15 through 20, create one of those tokens, being what they were talking about in the first line, then roll again.
Yep.
So you could easily attack with her, and if you roll properly, you just win that game that turn.
Yep.
This is gross.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. If she sticks, she's great. And that's where it's going to be, again, difficult, just due to the fact, we were talking about Zorn.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes hard.
This is a must answer. A must answer card.
Yes. And that's one of those things, because if she is able to go off, whatever other creatures you might already have on the board, whatever, you're able to do on that turn 5, maybe even turn 4, depending if you're ramping into her, then you have to deal with her. So there's a interesting connection, because we have another card called Pixie Guide, which we'll probably talk about later. But basically with Pixie Guide and her, you have a high possibility of basically going infinite, because you're rolling 2 dice and keeping the best one. So the likelihood of you getting that 15 to 20 is a lot higher. I mean, there's chances you miss, of course, with 2 dice, but nonetheless, it just makes it where basically you can just keep popping off over and over again, which is pretty insane. So
okay, I'm guaranteeing you're going to see some decks out of us with that card in it. So okay, next is I'm just going to start off by saying this is probably, in my opinion, the most powerful card that they have shown us in the set so far. It is Demilich. It costs 4 blue, but it doesn't. It's a creature skeleton wizard. It's not even legendary. That's even better. It's a 4/3, so it gets around Stomp, and then it's got some really fun text. Its first text line is, this spell costs 1 blue less to cast for each instant and sorcery spell you cast this turn. So like I said, it's 4 blue initially, but you're probably never paying 4 blue for it. Then we have, whenever Demilich attacks, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard, copy it, you may cast the copy. I mean, that's already really strong, but let's just seal the deal with how strong this card. Lastly, you may cast Demilich from your graveyard by exiling 4 instances and or sorcery cards from your graveyard in addition to paying its other costs. Woo! Okay. Yep. This is gonna see legacy play, modern play, historic play, standard play.
Yeah,
Tell me what we're doing this. Tell me what we're doing.
This card is probably one of the most busted cards that we've seen in a long time, especially for like spell slinging decks. It's, think about for standard. Let's just talk about standard specifically.
Yeah.
I was probably going in one direction. I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I'm leaning towards like Magecraft decks where you can pump your creatures, move them forward, get this guy out for free. Now you're pumping him as well, so you can kind of go in and start even doing more damage. And then every turn after that, when this guy's on the board, you're repumping your creatures to win the game. So that's one way I was going. What way were you thinking?
I'm on board with, I saw this card blowing up on Twitter yesterday. This is absolutely an amazing card, and I'm on good old legendary Croaky side. I think immediately this is going to fit in with an Izzet shell, the current Izzet shell that everybody's the aggro version, not the Izzet Snow dragons, but the really low end, dragon sprite kind. So this is going to be a gross card, like Will was saying. Early game, you cast, 2 instances, and then really cheap ones throw this for 2. They kill it. Later on, if you go off on a turn, you pay 3 or 4 instances. Now this is free. It's coming back out. It's got so much value. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and honestly, in Modern, this is probably going to be a heavily played card for those Modern Spellslinger decks.
Yeah, so... Yeah, I definitely think people are going to be buying 4 copies of this on paper, and I'm definitely going to want 4 copies in game. So, Speaking of really fun blue cards, next we have Wizard Spellbook. It's a little expensive, but it does some things. It's 2 blue, 5 colorless. It's an artifact. Tap it and exile target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. Roll a d20. Activate only as a sorcery. 1 through 9, copy that card. You may cast that copy. 10 through 19, copy that card. You may cast the copy by paying 1 colorless rather than paying its mana cost. And then lastly, if you crit and hit that natural 20, copy each card exiled with Wizard Spellbook. You may cast any number of those copies without paying their mana cost.
Yep.
If it hits the board.
Yes, that's 100% what I was thinking. It's very powerful, very costly card. So for standard, it's going to be one of those very specific decks. Yeah, it's very niche. You're going to have to build 100% around it. What you're trying to do is this.
I'm sorry, you first.
No. I was going to say, but in Commander, this card is going to be a definite auto-include in a ton of decks. It'll definitely be one of the 99s. Even in Brawl, this is definitely an addition that you can put in there, because once it does hit the board, now it's a deal with. And you've already probably done so many different spells, maybe tutor effects, maybe like cantrips, whatever things to kind of like move you along. Now you're just going to get straight value out of this. So yeah, I think in standard it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but I think in other formats, I think it's definitely going to see play.
I mean, my initial thought off the top of my head is 4 Onyxes, 4 of this, and nothing but instances or sorceries, blue-black control. I win the game.
Right?
Yeah, so, I mean, because every spell that you cast to just destroy your opponent's game plan later on is value for you with the Wizard Spellbook, and this is cast. So you're still casting them, and so you're still getting your Onyx triggers. Not only are you getting your Onyx triggers if they lose 2 life, you gain 2 life, but Onyx is building your hand back. I mean, like I said, like Will said as well, this is a very specific build around. I think there's only going to be very, very heavy control decks this goes in, but I do think it will see some play, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, well, next we have Guardian of Faith. It's 2 white, 1 colorless for a creature spirit knight. So I like the knight part. That's going to fit into some things. It's a 3/2. And then here's the fun part, though. It has flash and vigilance. So I love both of those keywords. Flash is very good because doing it at the end of your opponent's turn is super strong, and vigilance is not tapping. And then what does this thing do? When Guardian of Faith enters the battlefield, any number of other target creatures you control phase out. How are we utilizing this card, Will?
So this card, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, perfect for mono white, perfect for Boros decks. You're trying to build up quick, and then you're trying to just go straight to the face. Take them out as fast as you can. But the biggest issue with most of those decks is if you're playing against control decks. And most of those control decks, what are they trying to get into as fast as they can? Board wipes. So they're trying to get your board out of there so they can reset it and then take over the game. He stops that from happening. So what he does is he phases out your board, so they're 100% protected. He's the only one who dies, and then they come right back, and then it's now your next turn. And when that happens, you win the game. So it's definitely going to be one of those cards that's going to utilize to help those decks kind of like get over the top.
So, and yeah, in my opinion, it's funny how we both think differently. You think, let's protect our creatures from our opponent. I'm thinking, let's protect our creatures from ourselves. And I want to run a mono white shell, or I guess it could be white black, but basically I want to play all creatures with board wipes and this card, but I got to make sure I have this card when I board wipe. So I phase out all my creatures, board wipe, my creatures come back, but yours are gone. So I think this is going to be fun. Okay, so if you remember in one of our previous episodes, the new rare lands, the lands that come into play tapped unless you if you control 2 or more lands, those ones, we've already done white, black, and blue. We haven't done red or green. We still haven't seen green, but we do have the red one, and it is, I think, probably one of the strongest ones, and I believe Will is going to agree with me. So this one does everything the other ones do, comes into play tapped if you control 2 or more, taps for 1 red, but you can pay 1 red, 3 colorless, and until end of turn, Den of the Bugbear becomes a 3/2 red goblin creature token with, whenever this creature attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that is tapped and attacking. That is a value. And it's a mana sink for red, because we all know red likes to flood. So now we're doing something with it. It's not just a 3/2 attacking, you're getting 1/1s.
Yes,
Wow.
and that's what's really, and it fits right into that where we like to see you're paying 4. Most of those lands that we see the most value out of is in that 4 range. So with that said, we talked about it earlier where this was going to be in direct competition with some of the other lands that we had. You know, this one right here, I think, kind of takes over in that prospect of those other lands. So, you know, instead of putting +1/+1 counters, or instead of using your snow lands to activate and create a creature, this I think can take over. If you, again, it has to be in a red shell, so I totally get it. So those other lands are probably going to still see all those great value that you're going to have in those decks. But in a red shell, I think this one is going to start taking over. And the reason being is because not only is it a 3/2, but you're creating a 1/1. So just like you were saying, you get so much more value, and it is a mana sink. So at the end of the day, you're using all of your mana, you know, correctly, and you're getting value out of it. I think this card is going to be bonkers.
Yeah, as long as the come into play tapped effect doesn't just absolutely destroy whatever deck it's in, I 100% see this getting gameplay, because this is the White Castle, but better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the White Castle costs 4 to activate, and it's just giving you a 1/1. This is giving you a 3/2 attacking with the 1/1. So, very strong card. So, a new mechanic that they have just recently come out with, it's or a new card type, I should say, which is very similar to Sagas, except they stay on the board, are class cards. But before I get into those, because we've got 10 of them for you, we have a couple of honorable mentions, 3 cards we want to talk about that are uncommon and common real quick. So the first one is called Pixie Guide. This is 1 blue, 1 colorless. It's a creature fairy, and it's a 1/3, and it has flying. I like that it's a 3 defense, because it really shuts down a lot of rogue players' ideals, and it has a neat effect. Grant an advantage. If you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice +1 and ignore the lowest roll. If you're building around that mechanic, this is strong.
So this card is a really good card. I think it's amazing. You know, it's a 1/3, you know, a good backside. But the upside is that you get the extra die roll. There's so many good cards right now that are coming out with die rolls. And, you know, the benefit that it can offer you is just amazing. So once it's on the board, it has to be one of those things that if you see this, you know what their deck is kind of going around. Yes. So you probably are going to have to remove it pretty quickly.
Yeah, if you're building a deck that revolves around the rolling a dice mechanic and you're touching blue, I think this is definitely going to be an auto-include of at least 2, probably, if not 4. I think it's a pretty strong card. Next, we have Feywild Trickster. It's 1 blue, 2 colors, creature, gnome, warlock. It's a 2/2 for 3, so it's a little underpowered for the vanilla stats. But whenever you roll 1 or more dice, create a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. So any card in Magic that produces creatures when you do something is usually valuable enough to see some standard play, but this is definitely at least seeing some limited.
Yeah, and I definitely limited. I think if you see this and you start seeing other die rolling cards, start picking them up, and you can probably make that work to your advantage, because, you know, you go overhead. Flying in limited is always a win con. But in standard, I think it's probably, this is a definitely build around deck. So, you know, all the die roll cards that we are going to see, plus on top of that, different artifacts that tap. So not only can you die roll on your turn if you're like attacking or things along those lines, but on their turn, if you have an artifact that you can tap to die roll, then you're also getting value on their turn too. So you can constantly keep creating 1/1s on each of those turns. So we'll see. I mean, for the most part, I think it's going to be very much a niche for a deck specific.
And lastly, before we get into our class cards, we have Brazen Dwarf, 1 red, 1 colorless, creature, Dwarf Shaman. It's also a 1/3, which is not a bad stat. I like that. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, Brazen Dwarf deals 1 damage to each opponent. So,
I think it's funny because imagine all 3 of these in the same deck.
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you have Brazen Dwarf, you have the Trickster, you have Pixie Guide. So not only are, again, they're all like enablers. So now you start adding the die rolling creatures or die rolling artifacts into it with these guys. And not only are you dealing damage, creating 1/1s, but you're rolling 2 dice. So now you're doing it twice as much. So it's cool that they can kind of compound on top of each other. And again, they're not legendary, so you can have multiple on the board. So if you're rolling multiple dice, you're doing multiple damage, creating multiple fairies. So I don't know. I like Brazen Dwarf. I think he's going to be fun. Again, 100% around a specific model type when you're building the deck. And if you already see 3 of the cards that are probably going to be in the deck already.
Well, we've already got the newest archetype coming out. I'm calling it now. It's Izzet RNG. We're calling it. I think it's fun that we're gonna have I'm just joking around, but what else would we kind of gonna have die roll or RNG decks coming out with it. That's gonna be kind of interesting. And then we're gonna have dungeon decks coming out. So it's kind of neat to see that we're gonna have some new archetypes coming out there. Okay, yes. Well, I think it's time to get into these new class cards. So first off, these are very similar to Sagas, except for they don't auto trigger every turn. You have to pay into them, which you'll see, and then they don't leave the board. They stay on the board once you have finished all the levels. And from what I see so far, they all come out with level 1 and do something, and then you can power them up from level 2 to level 3. So we will start with Ranger class, which is 1 green, 1 colorless. They're all enchantments / classes, so I'm not going to keep saying that. They also all say gain the next level as a sorcery to add its ability. So they do stack as well. When you go to the next level, you don't lose something that came previously. So let's get into Ranger class. When it comes into play, Ranger class enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. Level 2 costs 1 green and a colorless. It's whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. And then level 3 is 1 green, 3 colorless. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Tell me about this.
This is pretty cool because like you're getting a 2/2 for 2, so automatically it's seeing itself.
Already
so that's
value.
Fine. Yep. And then you don't have to activate it the next turn.
Yeah, exactly.
You just leave it on the battlefield.
It can be a mana sink when you need it.
Exactly, and that's how I'm looking at all of these classes. They're all going to be mana sinks. So once they're on the board, keep doing your normal game plan. Do your thing. If you can level it up, great. If not, just keep doing your normal thing. But if you do level it, I mean, getting that +1/+1 counter, that's awesome. That's definitely an enchantment you want on the board. So if you're swinging 1 creature, it keeps pumping itself. So level 3, you get to cast the creature on the top of your library. So basically, it's like a planeswalker on the battlefield. So that's an enchantment. So that's the cool part about Ranger class. That's why I like it. So I think it's going to be a fun card to play with.
And pay attention to the mana cost on all these. Will made a good point, and what he said was this: you can consider this a 2/2 creature for 2. Look at all of these as the first ability is what it does, and then later you can do more because all of them are priced at 1 or 2 mana and do something really neat that the others just come later. So just consider it like that, if you will. So that's a very good way to look at all of these. So next we have Wizard class, which is 1 blue. That is it. And you have no maximum hand size. Control decks are going to love this. Now you can get to level 2 by paying 1 blue, 2 colorless. When this class becomes level 2, draw 2 cards. So it's just sitting there, and you can't do it at end of turn. It is sorcery speed, but you can draw 2 cards at any time if you have nothing else to do. Or say they've destroyed your hand, or you've run out of gas. That's amazing. And then level 3, pay 1 blue and 4 colorless to get there. Whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control.
Yeah, that's huge. That last one is huge. So like having a max mana size right off the bat is great for blue. And then drawing 2 cards, like you said, whenever you need to. But the last one, if you get to this, and again, it's just mana sinking, right? So you're just dropping it in because you have to. Then anytime you start drawing cards, no matter what, you're putting +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. So imagine like flashing something in later and then drawing cards on their end step or doing things along those lines, and then it goes back to your turn, and then you draw more cards, and now you're hitting for, like, I don't know, 10. So there's just different things you can do, and I really like this one. I think it's definitely going to be fun to see in control decks.
I love the fact that you could have a 7-card hand, draw for the turn, and then draw these 2 cards, have, 10 cards in your hand, and it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
if you had nothing else to do. And the other thing I like is that the level 3 ability, if you just are going the manlands way, you put if you attack with the manland and you're on level 3, you put that +1/+1 counter on the manland, and we know how that works. When it becomes a land again, it stays there.
Yep.
So there's a lot of value in this card. Okay, let's go ahead and go into the Bard class, which is our first 2-colored class. It's 1 green, 1 red. When it comes into play, legendary creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. And we know we have plenty of legendary creatures to play with. Level 2 costs the same amount, 1 green, 1 red. Legendary spells you cast cost 1 red and 1 green less to cast. This effect reduces only the amount of colored mana you pay. So that's super strong. I mean, you could be getting a lot of value there. And then level 3 costs 1 red, 1 green, and 3 colorless. Whenever you cast a legendary spell, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So like I said, all of these are just priced really well for the first one.
Yeah, honestly, just casting it for 2, and any legendary creature that you come out moving forward gets a +1/+1 counter, that's good enough. Like, that enough is already pumping your creatures every turn. So, and again, if you have mana to spare, you have, something you want to do, cool, get to level 2. Now, any legendary creature you have that falls within that color scheme is coming out cheaper, and you're pumping them. And then finally, every time you start casting them, you're pumping them, they're coming out cheaper, and you're able to see the next 2 cards to do it over and over and over again. So if you're building a legendary deck around Bard class and it fits in that Gruul scheme, I think it's going to be pretty gross. I'm excited to see this.
The more and more we get into these and the more we read them, these are the new adventure cards. In my opinion. So this is going to take the place of those in September. This is really every color. I have a feeling every deck you play in Standard is going to be touching one of these. Yeah. They're going to have some amount of one of these in their deck. Well, let's go ahead and see the Cleric class. It's 1 white. When it comes into play, if you would gain life, you gain that much +1 instead. Pretty powerful for certain decks we know of already. Level 2 costs 1 white and 3 colorless. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Heliod.
Yeah, why not, right? Heliod for 1 more.
Now, if you have Heliod on the board, you're doing 2. And if you have the mana to put into it, but like we said, these are good mana sinks. And then level 3 is 1 white, 4 colorless. When this class becomes level 3, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Didn't talk about mana costs either. Nope. You gain life equal to its toughness. Hello, Angel deck. So what did I ruin what you were gonna say? No, what are we doing?
That's 100% what I was going with. I was totally going towards Angel decks with this, and I was like, not only can you get yourself up there in life to protect yourself long enough that you can mana sink this out, and then eventually just put it back on the battlefield, and be able to start going off immediately, and also giving it +1/+1 triggers. And I mean, this card, when I first read this, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to play with this one specifically. This is going to be a great enchantment.
Yeah. And I don't know if you would want to do it, but just something I just thought about is, not all of them. Some of them you don't want to, but ones like this, you could blink these and start over again.
Yeah.
So interesting interaction. I don't know if it's worth doing, just something I just thought of. Next we have Warlock class, which is 1 black mana. When it comes into play, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature... Okay, so not when it comes into play. But at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, each opponent loses 1 life. Level 2 costs 1 black, 1 colorless. When this class becomes level 2, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard, which is a good thing if you're building around that. Level 3... is, this one's more expensive. 1 black, 6 colorless. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they've lost this turn.
Yeah, this card could be super deadly. And again, you're playing black. So if you're controlling the board, if you're killing off things, you're kind of like manipulating your hand a little bit. And then eventually you can get to a point where you're able to play this. This actually will probably see historic play, just due to the fact that if you're able to, get this and stick it, I think you just win. So there's a lot of advantage for this card.
Now, we don't talk about limited a lot because that's not what we really do on this channel. There are really good limited players out there, and I don't want to pretend I'm one of them. But I think you actually get one of these in your opening pack, and I think you're kind of building around these in limited.
Yeah.
The more I'm looking at them. Okay, so next we have Barbarian class. It's 1 red. If you would roll 1 or more dice, instead roll that many dice +1 and ignore the lowest roll. And keep in mind, like we said, these all stack. So when you go to level 2 and 3, that still is going to be happening every single time. Level 2 is 1 red and 1 colorless. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains menace until end of turn. So this is really good with a really fast rush deck so far. And level 3 is 1 red, 2 colors. Creatures you control have haste.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And I love it because the first one already fits into some of the cards we've been talking about. And here's the other thing: none of these say legendary.
True.
So you can have multiple on the board, and some of them you're like, wow, okay, cool. What am I doing? And it's really interesting to kind of like see how you can use these cards. For me, red. Don't be wrong. Getting to that last one, all your creatures have haste. I think that's where you're really trying to get to. And in red, for the most part, I think that if you can get to that portion, it's going to be that much harder to stop you, because now all of your normalized creatures that are hitting the board, maybe they are exiling some stuff, or maybe they're blasting things, whatever they're supposed to be doing. Now they're also coming at you directly to the face. So I think this card is definitely going to be a strong include in some of those red decks.
Yeah, depending on how mono red looks, this could fit into mono red. It could be a little slow, but it could fit. We just don't know yet, but I like what I'm seeing. Next, we have Rogue class. Okay, I'll get over myself. It's 1 black and 1 blue. Yeah, you knew that was going to be the case. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, I have a feeling we all know it's about to happen, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled. Level 2 costs... yeah, right? It's just rogues doing what rogues do. Level 2 is 1 black, 1 blue, 1 colorless. Creatures you control have menace, which is also very good for rogues. And then level 3 is 1 black, 1 blue, 2 colorless. You may play cards exiled with rogue class, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Man, this is a permanent trickster on the board.
100%. And that was like, when I first saw this one, I was like, oh, can we just make rogues more powerful?
Yeah.
So now, if you say you drop a rogue on turn 1 for a 1/1, right? And then next turn you drop.
And they don't have to be rogues.
They don't have to,
but it just fits into the theme
but it fits that theme.
Yes.
But so imagine a flying rogue that's a 1/1, right? We'll just say in a rogue deck that just
maybe a blue one that you could sack and draw a card if they have 7 cards in their library, something like that. If that
something along those lines.
Okay.
And then it hits them. So it exiles a card and it mills a card. So you're double duting right off the bat on turn 2. And then if you are able to eventually get to that turn, or to that level 3, and start playing the cards that you're exiling, it's just even more gross. But again, it does not have to be a rogue deck, and it could be basically Dimir control. You can use other ways of kind of like controlling the board, attacking them every turn, exiling cards anyways. So this card's, it's gonna be strong if you can get it off.
You rewind this a little bit, you can hear Will say double duty. I know, I'm a child. Next we have fighter class. It's 1 white. It's 1 white, 1 red. When fighter class enters the battlefield, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. That's really good if you love Boros equipment decks like my son does. Next level is 1 white, 1 red, 1 colorless. Equipped abilities you activate cost 2 less to activate. That seems very strong. And then level 3 is 1 white, 1 red, 3 colorless. Up to 1 target creature blocks this combat if able. So what do we think?
So if you are building around like definitely a Boros artifact deck, and you're building those equipments and you're doing things, I think it's great. I think it's definitely an auto include, because you're getting the equipment that you need. Eventually you're making all of your equipment cheaper, but I love that it forces them to block. So if you have like lifelink and things along those lines, you're making them do it. And I think that's a great addition to equipment decks, because for the most part, you're doing the normal damage you're trying to do, and they're gonna try to get by. And sometimes they're like, oh, I'm gonna take the hit, I'm gonna save my creature, I'll try to kill them next turn. Well, there's no saving creatures. They have to deal with it. I'm not sure how strong yet in the standard shell this is going to be. I mean, we've seen some stuff so far. It might be better in September when we rotate out. This might be a stronger card. But I definitely think it's going to be an auto include in a lot of commander decks.
Okay. Next, we have Druid class, which is 1 green, 1 colorless. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Level 2 is a green and 2 colorless. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. And then level 3 is 1 green, 4 colorless. When this class becomes level 3, target land you control becomes a creature with haste, and this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. It's still a land. This could see some play. It's definitely seeing some limited play.
Yeah, I honestly, for me, just levels 1 and 2 are enough. Like, I don't know if I actually need that level 3. Level 3 is, like, to me, like, icing on the cake. Like, if you get to level 3 and I need to win that turn, then that's what you're using it for. But I honestly feel like level 1 and level 2 is what you're really using this card for. So you're getting life every turn, so you're kind of keeping yourself out of kill range. And then being able to play an additional land every turn on top of, like, I don't know, Scud Swarm decks or other decks that have landfall, you're definitely going to get so much value out of it. And then eventually, say you are able to, like, clean the board up, or maybe they attacked you and everything's tapped, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to pump all my mana now into this level 3, create whatever big creature I need, and I'm just going to finish the job. So that's what I kind of see that for.
Yeah, your opponent wipes the board. Okay, that's fine. You only have 5 life left. I have 7 land, and it has haste. Here you go.
Yep.
So, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I didn't play tons on D&D. I just really love the flavor, and I know all about it. So I don't know if there's only going to be 10 classes, if that's all that exists. But for today, we have one more class for you, and that's going to be Sorcerer class. It's 1 red and 1 blue. When Sorcerer class enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Pretty good mechanic. We all know that. Level 2 is also 1 red, 1 blue. Creatures you control have tap and add 1 blue or 1 red. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell or to gain a class level. And then level 3 is 1 red, 1 blue, 3 colorless. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, that spell deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of instances and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. Talk to me.
Yeah, so this card I definitely can see, again, in a Izzet Spellslinger deck, just like you were talking about Croakies, you know, where you're able to kind of like really manipulate and go through your cards super fast, create treasures and do things. If you're building around that mindset, I think this card's really strong, especially if you're trying to kind of like storm off to an extent and like draw extra cards and do more things. Because remember, now you can tap your creatures for blue and red. So if you have level 3 of this, and you're able to, I don't know, draw a couple cards and then discard a card to draw a couple more cards, then maybe discard a card to draw a couple more cards. Every time you're doing that, you're dealing direct damage to their face. So this is basically a giant burn spell of an enchantment. So it's pretty neat.
Yep. So, well, that wraps it up for all of today's cards. Will, before I give this episode its finishing touches, do you have anything to say to the ladies and gentlemen?
I just want to say thanks again, everybody, and hopefully we can inspire you to make some fun decks. And if you have some great ideas and you want to throw them our way, please just leave them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from them. We do respond, and we just want to make sure that we can add more value to the community.
Yes, that is true. So if you like this episode or anything else that we put out, please subscribe. When we hit 500 subscribers, we are doing something very special. Check the description down below to find out exactly what I'm talking about. Rate, review, and smash that subscribe button. If you're already a subscriber, thank you very much for being part of the Brew Crew. We love you. You're amazing. It's because of you that we keep doing this. But would you also check down below for our Twitter and share this on social media? Thank you to our Patreon. If you would like to be an additional patron, please join. That information is down there as well. And as always, until next time, have a blast in the arena.